switch over and see 333. And then the fourth building at this intersection with the bridges is on your left with the Roman colonnade, the Greek temple. That's the London Guarantee Building, 1923, Alfred Alschuler. Difficult site. It has 12 sides, but it's symmetrical. This will be the Beaux-Arts or neoclassic style also. Notice the urns up on top, reference the urns on the bridges. And then you may notice the winged griffins or lions above the base there on either side. That was the logo for London Guarantee. They insured ships and boats. And in 1923, this was one of the largest inland ports in the world. So picture this river all clogged up with industrial and commercial transportation. It was so crowded, people sometimes just went up. The jewelers used to bring their inventory home with them at night in their pockets. So they designed the building in such a way they could drive the car right onto an elevator up to the floor where their offices were. But as the cars got bigger and crime moved off the streets and into the offices, they took that out. On your left here is, so she's now gone back to doing murals, and it turns out that math plus art was a great background for a muralist. So everything in there is taken from an Art Deco building in Chicago, all the motifs. You can see the names of 3,000 Illinois residents on the back wall there on the granite that lost their lives in that igloo, 1989. So Nicoll came here to acknowledge its neighbor, 55 West Wacker. That's that putty-colored building, looks like a cat scratch spot on the concrete. That's an example of what's called brutalism, or raw concrete, designed in the mid-1960s by C.F. Murphy and Associates. Our second room here on your left is called the Marina. It's across from Marina City. You actually have drinks during the bad weather in those little bumps called the Cove. This is meant auto. The river can go up 7 feet, and then they open the locks, which we'll see toward the end. Well, a week after this room opened up, the water was up to the first step on the restaurant there, but they planned for this. Within 24 hours, they had it all hosed down, and the plants can handle that kind of activity. The next building I'm going to talk about on your left is a putty-colored building. Looks like an art. We didn't want to end up with what you see in New York. Sometimes no air conditioning, no fluorescent lighting then. And because our plots are square, you often get this armchair shape for Chicago Art Deco. In New York, their plots are rectangular, so their Art Deco looks a little more like a wedding cake or a waterfall. Our next room here on your left is called the Theater, and you'll notice they took the fencing down, and that's because they want to encourage people to come down here and explore the Riverwalk. Winter, they're going to be working on one of these bridges, similar to one in Millennium Park, designed with the toddlers in mind, although I think it's very popular with the dogs. They light this up at night. It's like our little mini Vegas here. The next building I'm going to talk about on your left looks like it has 2 oil cans up on top. It's one of 3 in a row by the New York firm Cone Cutters and Fox, designed over a 15-year older buildings, like the Jewelers Building. We thought they got these murals in the back. They're called The People in Our Neighborhood. The artist is Don't Fret. And those are real people, like the chef at Danny's. If you go on his Instagram, everybody's going with the program, and there's cameras all over here, so hope you can get down and enjoy those. Now the moniker for Chicago is the capital letter Y, based on the river. We've come up part of the stump. We're going to go up one of the arms, the North Branch. This was about industrial and commercial warehouses. As they moved out, it was about rats and rubbish and deserted warehouses. And today it's an example of what's now on these rental buildings. You have really small apartments, and there's lots of common areas for renting a room for your friends. And he said, we've got to get this kind of thing going in Chicago. So he took that on as his first project. And he may have bit off a little more than he could chew. It took him 18 months to defrost the place, at which point the facade started cracking. So they had to put metal reinforcing rods behind the stars on the facade. He punched through 4-foot walls to put those balconies in after removing 500 truckloads of horsehair, cork, and brine. But when he was done with this whole project, he ended up with a mixed commercial and residential use property. He was kind of a forward-looking architect. Here, they use the weight machines, the running trails, attend the aerobics classes, and out come beautiful people, a la Barack Obama, Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Jim Belushi, Rahm Emanuel. They all work out here or have worked out here. This is the East Bank Club by Ezra Gordon and Jack Levin in the mid-1970s. We can't really see anybody working now because when it was it's Riverwalk, they lock it to be in accordance with park district hours at night. The tower behind it, designed about the same time by Nicoll, and we rarely see anybody out there on the outside living space on a ute along the river today. They will do so because they will reap multiples upon their original investment. And on your right here, whenever you see red brick with black balconies, that's a tip-off. It was something else. This was the North American Railroad Distribution Warehouse by Nicoll in the early 1900s. But when it was converted to residential use, we did not have a parking facility on the other side. Compare and contrast the brick. The original brick here, it's over 100 years old, coal burning oven, solid color all the way through. The brick on the parking garage, an electric kiln much more recently. Now this is one of the challenges you have with adaptive reuse projects. How do you make changes and keep them in the same tenor? They're not always successful, but they did a pretty good job on this one. And on the right here, you get an idea of what the Riverwalk looked like everywhere 25 years ago. So got a lot of work left. Coming into view on your right is the new Pocket Park, Montgomery Ward Park, flanked by two white buildings designed by the French architect Lucien Lagrange. The one furthest away with the triangles or the trusses sold out in 2 weekends in 2002. So the developer begged the architect to do the second one here. It looks like it's got a ladder of balconies. Now many architects don't like to design balconies. They claim it shreds the facade. But Lucien Lagrange worked them into the shape of the building with the triangles or the trusses. And coming into view shortly between those two buildings in the distance, we'll get a slight view of the John Hancock 875 North Michigan building. He was working at Skidmore when that was being designed and built in 1974. But he said he was also influenced by these trusses on the bridges. Trusses or triangles are an efficient structural technique to reduce the need for columns. And if you look at the top of the 2002 building, that is not a penthouse, those are the mechanicals. How the building works, so he puts the mechanicals on top in full view for everyone to see. The next three buildings I'm going to talk about are part of the Montgomery Ward campus as such in Chicago right now. On your right, we have the headquarters for Montgomery Ward, designed by the in-house architect Willis Macaulay in 1930. When this was converted to residential use, we did have the Riverwalk ordinance, but there was no room, so they had to punch through an arcade to comply. Notice the abstract butterfly at the bottom, the abstract eagle at the tongues on the balcony. And notice the vertical emphasis here. The windows are taller than they are wide. Compare and contrast the vertical emphasis on the headquarters with the horizontal emphasis on the catalog house. This is Montgomery Ward. Was huge. Stock boys used to wear roller skates just to fill the catalog orders, bring them down to barges here, and then send the barge down to the old post office, which we'll see shortly. Many people feel that chocolate brown colored bas-relief design looks like Louis Sullivan. Various arts clubs throughout the city. Today, this is a great example of old economy. Montgomery Ward buildings, which one do you think is taller? They're actually the same size. There's some vertical emphasis, horizontal emphasis. By this time, the building engineers said the building pumps were the equivalent of trying to empty the Atlantic Ocean with a garden hose. Well, once they heard fish, they knew it was the Chicago River. They came out here and they noticed a huge whirlpool on the left under the Quincy Street Yellow Bridge House. So they got barges of aggregate from Prairie Services Material Group. There are pictures of them stacking up mattresses. They said it would have been suicide to send a diver down, although that was part of the ultimate solution. John Kenny of Kenny, over $1.98 billion in damages. But as a result of that little episode, most of the older buildings have incurred the cost necessary to definitively seal off from underground tunnels. And here's another little design trick. Look on your right, we have Riverbend with a mind movement, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. The building with the parabolic curve at the bottom also has a curve up on top. That's River Point, Picard, 2017. It's like a giant lid for the trains. There's 6 giant train tracks down there, including one that might be for a high-speed train to O'Hare if we get any infrastructure money. I think it's on the list. The portals there vent smoke from. View of that building with Nuveen on it, 333. It's like a moving picture show reflecting everything going on around it. Very dramatic when there's thunder and lightning, but we're going to pass on that today. And then its neighbor, the Lantern Building, is located on the site of the 1860 Republican Convention. Any of the Americans here remember who was the candidate in 1860? Who's good in history? That, Abraham Lincoln. Yep. That was the Wigwam Convention Center of the Sarganash Hotel. Went on to become the president during the Civil War. Now, one nice thing about this river cruise is you get a sense of what happened here over 300 years, but it's not all in chronological order. Now we're going to head down the South Branch, and on your left is a short reddish-brown brick building, the Great Lakes Building, by Halliburton Roche, the early 1900s. This is an excellent example. You can see the structure of the building expressed in the exterior. Behind every column, south of here were the stockyards. They do the carcasses. Hear me? If you want to get a drink. I'm going to talk a little about the history of the river until we get back to the main attraction. Good news about the river is it's been upgraded from toxic to highly polluted. Moving in the right direction. It's probably more accurate to say we did everything we could think of to pollute it. Now we're doing everything we could think of to clean it up. Well, it's swimmable by 2030, fishable so you can eat the fish by 2040. That's a stretch goal. So you've got column-free views looking. And Bank of America is attempting to consolidate most of their office. Thomas Edison was a brilliant inventor, think electricity, but he was a disastrous businessman. So Insel comes to be his secretary, makes a fortune in utilities, loves the opera, puts up half the cost of his building. But 1929, not a good year for Samuel Insel's businesses or the opera. 6 days after the place opened with a performance, I think this was a working river. All right, Gateway 4, James Stefano, shortly before he left Seymour. Not technically modern, this would be called contextual. Curve, to reflect the curve of the river, the glass is dyed green to acknowledge all this limestone. And so the new architects, landscape architects, decided to incorporate it in the Riverwalk. We have, I think, about 750 residential units up there. Honda. The only thing that was here, though, for many years was this backwards S-shaped building, River City, 1986, Bertram Goldberg. He's sometimes called Mr. Curve or Mr. Circle, the city within a city architect. He was very instrumental in bringing Beast to Chicago to teach at IIT, but he broke with Beast. He said there are no right angles. He starts designing with curves, and Beast reportedly never spoke to him again. Less is more, maybe, unless we're talking about it. But Bertram Goldberg was a bit of a social philosopher. He said it's dangerous to live in the suburbs and work in the city. If you want a rich cultural life with fine dining, museums, theater, you've got to live and work and play in the same general area. So this is mixed commercial and residential. Originally built for the sandbox set, which was young parents with children. And you can keep your boat there year-round. They have agitators to keep the water from freezing. It was supposed to be 3 times as big as what you see all the way ahead to the Roosevelt Bridge, but the city said no. They had 2 competing concerns by the time this was built. Density, they had very good luck with the housing projects. Alternatively, they weren't convinced anybody would want to live